Today, I want to talk about Nifty 50 and why your standard 50mm lens is the best lens for portraiture, and also how to take better portrait of someone you don't know. Welcome back, I'm Jimmy Cheng, a professional photographer and filmmaker based in London. Today's video is the second part of my short series on portraiture, as I received a few comments from my Instagram asking me if I can make some videos explaining how to take better portraits. Over the next few months, I'll be making a few videos on this topic, focused on one focal length at a time. So if you want to learn more about how to maximize your vision when taking portraits, remember to subscribe so you won't miss any videos from this series. Last month, I released a video about taking portrait using wide-angle lenses. If you haven't seen that video, the link is up here. Today, I want to talk about standard focal length, or 50mm in 135 format. To demonstrate, I'll be showcasing photos that I took with this particular focal length. Before I go further, just a friendly notice that I shoot Micro Four Thirds now. So all these sample images you see in this video, unless they are labeled specifically, are shot with my Olympus Micro Four Thirds cameras and this 25mm 1.2 Pro lens. For most beginner photographers, they will try using what comes with the camera to take any photos, whether it's landscape, travel, groups or single portrait. With the latter mostly shot between 24 to 50mm. And this is because how most people, well remember, people, not photographers, will keep the distance from one another for snapshots. And because of that, most beginner portrait photographers will start this path by taking what they're familiar with. And thanks to smartphones, most portraits that we see today are shot between 24 to 28mm. And because they want to include the surrounding in the frame, to remember where they've been. If you want to learn more about wide-angle portraits and why we use this particular wider focal length for portraiture, remember to check my previous wide-angle portrait video in the video description below. Thanks to smartphone again, 50mm has become the new standard in capturing some decent half-length to shoulder headshots, without sacrificing too much of the surrounding. And even in the old days, 50mm was popular among amateur portrait photographers, as they often find longer focal length a little too restrictive to photograph. If you want to know why, remember to subscribe, as my next video will be covering this particular topic. So for now, we are concentrating on 50mm and why it is so important and perhaps the best focal length for most portrait photographers. Standard focal length portrait is easy to start. Not only it has a perspective and angular view that is closer to how we, human, see things, but it also has a more natural compression and distortion when compared to wider or longer focal length. In short, it is very easy on the eyes and for the photographer to visualize. If you want to take picture with your girlfriend, boyfriend, your parents, or anybody really, you literally just have to hold the camera up to your eyes and press that shutter button, and bam, it's done. No thinking. Remember what I said about wide-angle portrait. Planning those little details around the subject is as important as your birth certificate. A 50mm portrait requires much less attention in this area. Because we're getting a tighter shot, the surrounding details that we consider as storytelling, or what I called texture in my previous video, becomes less critical. You can think that the longer the focal length, the more focus towards the subject. 50mm portraits may seem easy to take, but to take a great picture with this focal length, you need to understand both the environment and the subject. But in this case, with a bias towards the subject's characters. But just how do you do that? And how do you take portraits of someone that you barely know? Because we're shooting closer to a person's face and body, the position of his or her hands, the body angle, and the facial expression have become more prominent, and hence increasing their importance in the frame. So instead of free-flowing with the wide-angle portraiture, you have to start taking charge and direct your subjects more. One critical aspect of portraiture is how a photographer captures the character of his or her subject. It's easy to snap a photo of someone, but if you can't show who this person is or what he or she is like, then it's just a passport photo. Therefore, you need to start communicating to the person you want to photograph, not just saying, "Look at the camera, smile a little, chin down please." And you need to start having a conversation. This is also one aspect that could potentially separate a normal photographer to a portrait photographer, though this is not as critical as longer focal length portraiture. But communication is still the route to take what's hidden behind your subject's eyes to the camera lens. So bear that in mind. For a professional environment especially, my clients would normally book me for an hour or two, and most of the time it will be our first ever meeting. And this means we don't know each other. As a result, I need to work extremely hard to learn something about them in a very short period of time. For a 1-hour session, for instance, I would normally spend the first 20 minutes chatting and taking test shots. And most of these initial photos will only act as an icebreaker and won't end up in my final call. This practice is used to let my clients know that I'm taking photos of them, so I can gain their trust, and they're not intimidated and feel more comfortable by having a lens pointing at them. As most of my sessions are conducted at outdoor locations, building up their confidence is utmost important. Remember, 99.9% of my clients are not professional models, and if you want their photos to look natural and genuine, you need to work some magic. Finally, by constantly talking to them, showing your interest in learning and care about them, like what friends do, and when they do in reverse, by revealing their life, interests, and other things that they like to talk about with their friends, well, you just earn yourself a winning ticket, a ticket to their character, and it means the wall has come down and you have their trust. From this point, you can take as many photos as you want, in a way you want, while keeping everything genuine and honest. So this is the tip I want to share with you today as a professional portrait photographer. And of course, why 50mm in 1.35 format or 25 in micro four thirds or 35 in APS-C is perhaps an underrated focal length of portraitures. And remember, while many consider longer focal length like 85 or 90mm in 1.35 format is the portrait standard, most don't know that portraiture has no rigid rule on focal length. And just like many things in life, you adapt and find the right way to express your vision. I also mentioned in my last video that 85 and 90mm were focal lengths that used in larger formats in the olden days. And they don't represent a standard really, as they are different formats altogether. But as many photographers migrated from larger formats to 1.35, these focal lengths has become a reference, while maintaining familiar facial compression at a given distance. However, I will go through longer focal lengths in my next portrait series. And this brings to the end of my second video of the series, and you know what to do now. Thumb if you like the videos, and sub if you want to stay in touch with more photography and learn how to maximize your vision with your camera and lens. Peace.